I'm Craig McAtee, the CEO and Executive Director of the National Coalition of Advanced Technology Centers, and we'll just wait another 20 or 30 seconds to make sure everybody joins in. But while we're doing that, we will ask you to type in questions in the chat if you have them along the way, and there will be certainly a lot of interaction. That's what this is all about, from our members to our presenters today. Real quick, NCATC, for those of you who are new or not exposed to our membership in the past, we're about 175 community technical colleges strong across the nation in 38 states. We also have 48 corporate strategic partners, from Fanuc Robotics to Siemens Automation and many others on our website. You can find those under the tab of strategic partners for ncatc.org. And our pillars are focused on the future of work, smart automation and manufacturing. Second one's on all about work-based learning and industry apprenticeships and internships and co-ops. Our third pillar, as most of you saw today, is why you signed up, is focused on competency-based education and industry-recognized credentials. And our fourth, wrapped around all three, are really looking at the underserved populations in the country, underrepresented, for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So while we get started, I hope a lot of you have seen the newsletter that came out for Q4. It came out on, I think, Tuesday or Monday, the 12th. And in there are the articles that are springboards for the conversations today from our presenters. So without further ado, I want to introduce our presenters, who are all on the board of directors for NCATC, starting with Amanda Sizemore, who is our current president of the board. Amanda's with St. Charles Community College in Missouri, and she is the assistant vice president for corporate and community development there at the college. Second is Jonathan Beck, and Jonathan was with Northland Community and Technical College in Minnesota. Jonathan is the executive director and PI for the National Center for Autonomous Technologies, and has a deep understanding of all of those amazing things that are evolving for EV technologies autonomously, whether they're on land, sea, or in the air. And last but certainly not least is Dr. Scott Lucas, who is from WSU Tech in Kansas. Scott is the Vice President of Aviation, Manufacturing, and Institutional Effectiveness there. And he serves on our board and has also been elected as President-elect for our board for 2024. He serves on many other boards, and including the robotics group out of Pittsburgh, PA, called the ARM Institute, Advanced Robotics for Manufacturing, and he and I serve on the EWAC, which is short for Education Workforce Advisory Committee for Robotics. So a lot of great talent here presenting to you. Again, we will be short in the presentations. I will put the link for the newsletter in the chat after I sign off and introduce our first presenter, so you can reference that if you want, but they're going to actually talk from that, and I think we're going to start. Actually, the roll call. We want to actually, before we start with the presentation, have you turn on your cameras and your mics and just go around the room real quick and introduce yourselves. And while you're doing that, I'll put up the newsletter link. I think on my screen, we'll just let's start with Adam. You start, and let's go around the screen wherever you are and introduce yourself real quick.
Yeah, hi everybody. It's great to be here and to learn some of these from these folks here. And my name is Adam Graham. I'm the Deputy Executive Director for the Machinist Institute. We do registered apprenticeship and pre-employment, pre-apprenticeship training for manufacturing, machining occupations out in the Seattle area.
Great to have you with us, Adam. Good to see you. I'll call you out. I guess I see you on my screen. Jason, you're next.
Jason Veneman, Regional Manager with Amatrol, and we work with many of you in this room to support moving the skills from point A to point B and making sure your programs are successful.
And you have been with us as a strategic partner for over 15 years, and we appreciate that with our network. And glad you're here with us, Jason. Thank you very much. Amy Howe, I see you. You're from Lorraine. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Amy Howell. I am a program developer at Lorain County Community College. I'm just hoping to get some more information, I guess.
Okay, thanks for being with us, Amy. Jim Lorenz, another strategic partner. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Jim Lorenz. I am president of AVR Connect. We're a custom augmented and virtual reality solutions provider. Working I think we're on just starting our third year as a strategic partner. So glad to be here today.
Thanks for being here, Jim. Rhonda, I see you next on the screen.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rhonda Hodges. I'm the Vice President for Workforce Economic and Community Development with Patrick and Henry Community College. We're in Martinsville, Virginia.
Oh, I follow Greg and your college on LinkedIn every day. You're doing some great things in Virginia. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Hey, Danielle, introduce yourself.
I'm Danelle Maxwell with Ozarks Technical Community College in Springfield, Missouri.
And you just had a new grand opening this year of a brand new advanced technology training center, which is beautiful from the pictures I've seen. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. We are very pleased to be moved in and settled and actively having classes and training. So
wonderful. Well,
it's been a lot of fun.
Hope to see it someday in person.
We would invite you down.
I'll be there soon. Tarika, I see you here.
Good afternoon. My name is Tarika Hughes. I am with Southwest Community College. I am the Director of Career Training here in the Workforce Department.
Thanks for being with us today. Good to meet you. Nancy.
Hey, everybody. Nancy Legas. I'm the Director of Workforce and Economic Development at Pierpont Community and Technical College in Central West Virginia. I had been the director over the community colleges and workforce development with the system office for a while. That's how I'm very familiar with Craig and the group. And actually, our offices are now in the ATC in Fairmont.
Great to see you here. And it's been a while, but I'm glad you're all with us today. Thank you for being here. Hey, Bo, you're next on my screen.
I'm Bo Everett. I'm the Dean of Engineering and Skilled Trades at Oakland Community College in Auburn Hills, Michigan.
Great. Wonderful to see you with us. Appreciate it. And you all hosted one of our summer workshops a few years back, and we had a great time at your campus as well as touring Panic half a day with our team. So you got a lot of good robotics programs up there. Thanks for being with us, Bo.
Thanks.
One of my best friends a long time here, Lucinda, you're on the screen next for me. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure, Craig. Thank you. I'm Lucinda Curry, National Workforce Manager for the Composite Institute, IACME, as some of you know it, and working with several of you all to build the ACE, America's Cutting Edge program, across the country. And formerly, some of y'all may remember me from RCBI, the Robert C. Byrd Institute in West Virginia, where I worked with Craig on many initiatives. So good to be here. Sorry, not got the greatest voice right now, getting over COVID again.
Oh, no. At least you're here and you're getting over it, but I'm sorry you had it a second time. That's not good.
Thanks.
Thanks for being with us, Lucinda. Lisa Jones, you're on my screen next. Can you introduce?
Hi, I'm Lisa Jones. I work with Tarika at Southwest Tennessee Community College. I'm a technology instructor, and we're focusing, this whole college is working toward incorporating industrial certifications throughout the academic side and the workforce side. So I was real interested in seeing what y'all have to say.
So glad to meet you today, and thanks for being with us. And I think you'll hear a lot of good things and make some good connections as well. So that's what this is all about. Thank you. Elizabeth, I see you next.
Hi, thanks. My name is Elizabeth Generous. I work in Dayton, Ohio at Sinclair Workforce Development, Sinclair College in Workforce Development. I'm the program manager for the Digital Thread Initiative, and we are very interested in the credentialing.
Great. Good to see you. Glad we did a podcast together recently, and I'm looking forward to doing much more with you all as you move forward in the digital thread. Thanks for joining us. Jackson, I see your name up next.
Hi, I'm sitting up here in Warroad, Minnesota, in a brand new mechatronics lab. I'm with Northland Community and Technical College. And so we're just completing our first semester, and I just had a student turn on a machine in the background there. So happy to be here.
Good to hear your new lab there, and hope we get to see that someday as well. And thanks for being with us. Dave, you're next. Your mic's off.
Oh, I just said I'm still unpacking some Amatrol equipment, Jason. So.
Dave.
Yeah. Can you hear me now?
Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay. It's good to see you again. It's been a while. Dave Namany from Jack Martin Associates. We print and publish pre-apprentice training materials.
Good to see you. It's been quite a while, and I think before COVID, we got to see you in Minnesota, and then we didn't get to see you at all. So let's hopefully we see you in the near future in face-to-face.
Hope to reconnect.
That'd be great. Thanks for being with us. Cheryl Smith, I see your name here. Sherry Smith?
Yes, it's Sherry. Sorry, I was trying to unmute my video. I'm also with Jack Martin and Associates, Dave's new partner.
Wonderful. Good to meet you virtually.
Nice to meet you too.
Two more to go here, and then we'll get started in a little overview, and then we'll engage more. Rupert, I see your name here. Can you introduce yourself?
I'm Rick Rupert. I'm with RIB Software North America, and we are dedicated to largely the building, construction, design, construction, and ongoing management in buildings and facilities. And we are looking at, during 2023 through 2025, focusing our efforts and energies on educational institutions, giving students an opportunity to gain skills, experience, and possibly certifications for the kinds of programs and resources that they'll encounter in the working environment. So I apologize. I just kind of stumbled into this the other day when I was online. It sounded interesting, and I'll just sit in the background and kind of listen from this point forward.
Well, that's great. Thanks for joining us. I look forward to learning more about what you're doing. I'll put my contact information in the chat as well for anybody that want to reach out to me about maybe a connection beyond today. But please, I'm glad you're here. And we've got people that have been with us for over 15 years or more, and then a new people as well. So Rick, glad you stumbled upon us.
Thank you.
Thank you. And last on my screen, but not least, is a good friend, Doug Berger. Can you introduce yourself, sir?
Happy to. I founded Industry Reimagine 2030. And what we're looking at is how to scale non-traditional approaches for rapid workforce reskilling. So this is like the perfect forum for me to be listening in on.
Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you being here today. It's good to see you again this week, and I hope you're recovered from your COVID bout, because we were talking about that earlier this week. All right, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to the panel and then keep you all engaged as you move forward. But Jonathan, I know you've brought Aaron with you to present overview of your article, and please take it over and I'll join back in as you guys finish up.
Sounds great. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us. As Greg said, my name is John Beck, Executive Director for the National Center for Autonomous Technologies, also known as NCAT, but not to be confused with NCATC. However, I do have the privilege of serving on the board of directors for NCATC. Appreciate Craig's leadership in hosting the webinar today and the community for participating in this discussion. A little bit of background, NCATC is housed at Northland Community and Technical College at the aerospace site. The aerospace site is home to the nation's first UAS or drone maintenance program. launched more than a decade ago from the longstanding aviation maintenance program the college has had since 1959. Other programs at this location include the Electrical Engineering Technology and Industrial Automation and Control Technician programs, which are based in the CBE format, focus of the discussion today. And we look forward to leveraging those developments for the aviation maintenance program based on the recent changes with federal regulations that govern aviation maintenance training, opening the doors for performance-based assessments. Today, I'm joined by two faculty members for these programs. Aaron Dolan will be leading the presentation. Jackson Heron is also helping to support the Q&A session. Aaron will be providing a 10-minute presentation on the development of CBE programming, which has led to the launch of the new training facility supported by local industry partnerships as well. So I'll start by introducing Aaron Dolan, who's an electronics, technology, and automated systems instructor. He's been with Northland a little over 2 years, helping to launch the CBE programming for the college, as well as supporting Minnesota State initiatives. Prior to coming to Northland, he served as a faculty member for a small college similar to Northland in Connecticut. He's got a 27-year career with the Coast Guard, where he taught for the academy for 4 years, preceded by 4 years of teaching technicians to work on radio transmitters. So with that, I welcome Aaron to the conversation to share his expertise, which will really be focusing on the social aspects of CBE format from the student and faculty perspective. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Aaron.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Good to see everybody here. I'm coming to you from Thief River. We have a little bit of a blizzard going on right now, so I have a beautiful view of the snow. Is this coming through okay? Is my screen showing? Okay, thank you, Jonathan. All right, so what I'd like to talk to you today is some of the lessons learned as we implemented the competency-based education. Let's see if we can advance. There we go. To get started, this is one definition of competency-based education. I would draw your attention to point number one, and that is that students students advance on mastery as opposed to seat time. And then we could also talk about supporting individual learning needs. And I would argue that there's a large social component to that, and that's what I'd like to focus in on today. We stood up the competency-based program this fall, so I have 1 semester under my belt. Prior to that, we had an electronics technology automated system, and this was a conglomeration of 2 programs, and you could argue that it didn't quite fit what our industry partners needed. We live in Thief River Falls here, and our largest partner is DigiKey, which is an electronics parts distributor. And talking with those folks, it became very clear that they needed 2 different types of people. They needed folks who could be that forward interface with the customers to answer questions on the forum and help them find parts. And that's definitely electrical engineering technology, where they need to know those data sheets and how the parts work. And we also found out very quickly that they also needed automated systems, all their conveyors and that sort of equipment, and also to answer questions from customers that are in that particular field. Starting out this fall, we had 11 students. I had 5 returning from the ETOS program. And what we did is we took and selected the most appropriate classes from the new EETT and IECT competency-based, and then we'll backfill those in with substitutions. Had 4 full-time students, 1 post-secondary enrollment, and then 1 person who was finishing up their university. To get started, I just want to tell you the class structure. For the 1,000 level class, you'll notice that we have formative and summative, with the bulk of the grade coming right here. So 70% of the grade is these high stakes or the things in the tail end of the class. But you'll notice that they're allowed up to 3 attempts. So the lab, they must be able to demonstrate that they can do the competencies, and the post-exam, they need to get above 80%. Now, the first time, we'll just call that a bad day. The second time, okay, we've got a problem if they don't pass the second time. At that point, we're going to sit down. We're going to have a meeting between myself, the student, and my supervisor. We're going to make sure we have a very specific game plan so that the third attempt. In the formative side, you'll see that homework and quizzes count for a very small percentage of the grade. Quizzes, they'll get up to 3 attempts. They have to hit 80%. If they're not hitting 80% of the quizzes, they're definitely not going to hit post exams. Labs, mandatory, must complete all of them. And then what I'd really like to focus in for the rest of the discussion is this learning community, which counts for 5% of the grade. When I put these classes together, with every class, there are some folks who do very, very well, who move very fast. And then there's some folks who might need a little more assistance. And I knew that there was going to be a divide between those two. And that can lead to problems here with a sense of belonging and student motivation. And because we're so small, every student would know pretty much where every other student was. And I was very worried about that. And the other thing I was worried about is that as an instructor, I'm a limited resource. And with 11 students coming in, there's no way that I can do everything for everybody all at the same time. The solution was to effectively deputize all the students. And here's how that worked. For the 1,000 level classes, I added this learning objective. So everybody is expected to participate in that collaborative in-person learning environment, which is what you would be doing out in the field anyway, working in teams and working with a lot of online. And the other thing is, for the 2,000 level, we were going to have mentors. The language used by this psychologist, Lev here, Bukowski, introduces 2 terms that I thought were especially applicable and absolutely clear and understood by the students. One of them is the more knowledgeable other. We'll explore what that means in a moment. And then the zone of proximal development. Now, the more knowledgeable other for our particular purposes in this competency-based environment is other students who have completed the class. Again, we're deputizing folks here, right? So other students who have completed the class can interact with the learner. The instructor can act as the learner. And then our industry partners, keeping in mind that where we live, there's a very large body of electronic folks that can help our students. So we have the more knowledgeable other, and we also have this zone of proximal development, which basically says that as we build our classes, we're building them with the expectation that students are going to be interacting with that more knowledgeable other. The more knowledgeable other has a few responsibilities that are clearly outlined in this class. Again, this is a way of bringing students together. So one of the things is the chalk talk. Before every lab, I expect the learner to find a more knowledgeable other. Again, this could be several different people in the class, and review that lab, identify any particular problems, make sure they have the right parts, that sort of thing. There's a signature document, which I'll show in a moment, which was very effective for the class. And then, of course, the MKO should be available to generally answer any questions that the learner might have with limitations. Right? I'm not expecting the MKO to present the lessons or to go over everything, because at that point, the MKO should refer that learner back to the various lesson plans that are part of the class. So this is an example of the signature document. And I would argue that of all the things that I put together, this one here was very important. And here's how it works. The learner will find an MKO and say, I want to tell you about, for example, the relationship between frequency and period. The MKO will listen to what the learner says, probably ask a few questions. And if they're confident that the learner knows what it is they're speaking about, then they will sign and date this. So there's about, I don't know, 10 to 15 questions for every class. And I would argue that this here did more for social cohesiveness than just about anything else that we could possibly do. It worked very well in the class. Here's an example of the chalk talk I mentioned. So again, the learner would find an MKO and ask them to go over the lab with them. And this is just a checklist that the MKO can go over. For example, describing the DC power supplies and what the various modes are, because that's very important to this part of the lab. Or talking about the LED here and how to identify what the various parts are. So that's a description of the class. I'd like to now talk to you about some of the lessons learned. And one of the biggest problems that really surprised me is this problem or this concept of excellence versus perfection. And let me back up a little bit. The person with or displaying excellence, I would argue, would come to these signatures and be willing to make mistakes. Right? It's kind of a way of moving forward, and that healthy striving, moving forward so they get the competencies done as quickly as possible. So they're not afraid to come to the MKO and say, well, I think I have this part, but maybe not this part. Could you help me? Right? They're always moving forward. Whereas the students who focus on perfection are basically stuck. They won't ask about, for example, what is safety ground for handheld power tools until they know it exactly, or they won't move forward until they know their quizzes and all their questions perfectly. So they end up getting stuck. And I would argue that time, of all the things in the competency-based program, time is something that's probably one of the most precious resources they have. So if they're working on excellence, that's wonderful, they'll move fast. If they're working on perfection, it eats time and they don't finish as well as they could. Other lessons learned. By default, students tend to focus in on a single class, and they will work very, very hard to get one class all the way to completion. And that's not very good for them because it doesn't use best learning practices, for example, the spacing and interleaving that are so important as they go through their learning. Other lessons, partnering. Now, partnering is certainly something that we should encourage, because if you partner, you have somebody to act as a sounding board, you have somebody help motivate you, you have a study buddy, all these wonderful things. But I found out that partnering is actually a problem because students have loyalty to each other. And what often happened is that they would move at the pace of the slowest student. Or if one student had a problem, and to be sure, there's lots of problems between COVID and children sick and dentists and teeth and transportation, all of these things. But anyway, if they partnered up too tightly, they would move at the pace of the slowest students, which meant a lot of times they weren't actively participating, and they would take the day off just because that particular student wasn't there. So partnering it's a mixed bag. You got to watch out for that. One more thing is what you're actually doing in the flex labs. Now, we have flex labs, and by the union contract, I'm here for 27 hours a week. And I've got some students that will come in and they'll spend all 27 hours in there with me. But if they don't understand the competency-based process, they end up doing some things that aren't quite so good. For example, they'll come in and they'll work on the homework during the lab. They'll work on the various lesson assignments. They won't be doing after learning is what I'm trying to say. And some of them were under the impression that in that 27 hours, they could complete everything. I would argue that that's not true, because in no way does competency-based education limit the amount of time that your average student is completing or takes to complete that course. At this point, I'll stop and open up to any questions.
I think we've got a couple more presentations. I appreciate that overview and digging into the details there. I think there's a lot of great conversation, but I think I'll pass it back to Craig to do the introductions on the next two presentations and then follow that up with discussion at the end.
That was very helpful and gives me a much greater understanding of how it's applied in the classroom and labs. So Aaron, thank you so much, as Jonathan said, but we do want to get moving, and please stay with us for interaction with the rest of the group here as we move into the second session. But next we were going to bring up Amanda Sizemore. And then Scott Lucas is going to talk about after that industry recognized credentials and his experience with that, matching the CBE with industry expectations. But Amanda's going to focus her overview on career pathways, on-ramps for students, as well as how they can discover the most interesting technologies that might be something they want to explore down the road and get a job or career in. So Amanda, without further ado, it's
Okay, again, I'm Amanda Sizemore. I'm with St. Charles Community College. And for those of you, I sit just outside of the St. Louis metropolitan area in Missouri. But my service area is a densely populated suburban area, as well as a fairly rural area within the state of Missouri. And so our challenges are not unlike many of the challenges that you're facing, in that we hear from employers that they can't find work-ready, qualified, skilled employees to fill these jobs. And so in working with our K-12 partners, we developed a pilot, and I'll call it a pilot. We are just finishing our first semester of this pilot, which we offered our K-12 junior and seniors an opportunity to pursue, we'll call it, and explore different disciplines within, we'll call it, the multidisciplinary area. Within the program, we embedded work readiness and work success skills, competency-based and industry recognized credentials that allowed those students an opportunity to not only gain awareness in a variety of areas, but also to gain a recognized credential for which they could then leverage for multiple ways. And it's kind of, we've mentioned it a little bit here before, but as we build and reimagine some of our programs, we're really looking at leveraging those industry credentials as an opportunity to standardize our rubric. Looking at standard skill sets that can be bridged over and embedded with our certificates and credentials, and creating those smooth pathways for individuals who seek to expand their knowledge in a specific area. So having said that, the group of students is kind of an interesting thing to look at. We actually targeted some of our non-traditional alternative school students, those that their GPAs weren't necessarily the highest, those harder to reach students. And we're finding that we're getting a lot of success in those spaces. That GPA doesn't necessarily tie to success, doesn't tie to ability to really help them identify an area that they're really interested in pursuing, and finding that, yes, they can do some things beyond high school that can get them a career and a career that pays well. And so that's kind of the basis of what our, we'll call it, this work readiness, career exploration component that we've built with our K-12 partner. Introduced in these strategies are components of things like robotics and mechatronics as a whole, basics of safety, precision measuring, some of those core components that we hear from our employer partners that, we've all heard it. They need to learn how to read a tape measure, those basics. And then building on that and continuing to into the next semester of bringing in those employers and having these students interact with these employers. We had this cohort of students in to meet with our employers during our manufacturing day. And we had more than one employer offer these kids jobs. And I'm like, wait, they have to finish. And so they were very impressed. These students are students where their parents have shown up to events, and their parents and the students will fully admit, my kid would have dropped out of school at this point. So it's a different way to interact with students, to really present them with different kinds of opportunities within and different opportunities for success in bites and chunks. And it's something that we're continuing to learn from. We're really looking at strategies for scaling and sustaining these kinds of things. The advantage to this model for us is it gives us the ability to react quickly as new things come into play. So we're tapping into AR/VR technology, we're tapping into simulation, you name the thing. But as new initiatives and new needs come about, we're able to switch those out into the curriculum to really present these students with timely content. And that's been our big push. We have about, in this pilot, we have about 12 students. For the next academic year, we're looking at a two cohorts, which would take us to about 24 to 36. But we're being pushed and asked to figure out ways to expand that capacity, because everybody likes the model. They're seeing the potential for success. And so that's our challenge, if you will, right now, is scaling it and looking at different ways to expand it to reach a larger population with this kind of concept. So with that, I'll leave it. But we have bridged this as a pipeline piece for some of our newer programs. And it is a bridge piece for a mechatronics program, which we do have an NSF ATE grant that we're working with as we launch that. So, and I will let this go back to Craig for Scott.
Amanda, I'm excited to know more. I know we've talked about this off and on in your article in the newsletter. By the way, Scott, thank you for pointing out I put up the wrong link at the first of the meeting. I've corrected that, and the fourth quarter newsletter is in the chat correctly now. But I can't tell you how much I want to follow your success on the pilot. And again, the scalability is the key, and resources and all that goes with it is always the barrier to expanding, because you can only do so much with what you're given with funding from the state and people that know what they're doing on the ground. But it sounds wonderful. And I really appreciate you sharing that with the team and in the newsletter this year as well. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Scott Lucas, who's going to get us deep into some of his successes and maybe some failures too, because that's always part of it, with the industry recognized credentials in CBE. Scott?
Thank you, Craig. So, as we look at what the topic area is, looking at industry credentials as well as competency-based education, we at WSU Tech really, we take the point of view of we can't do that without taking a look at our mission, and our mission truly tries to find that balance of what's the best thing for our students, and at the same thing, what is the best thing for our employers. So WSU Tech, we're located in Wichita, Kansas. If you don't know Wichita, we are dead center of America. We are the air capital of America. Business jets are built here, corporate jets, commercial jets, all kinds of aviation. So it's the heart of aviation, but we do all kinds of other manufacturing here in Wichita. And so we prep all kinds of different types of technicians. And so as we look at how to prepare them, and it doesn't even have to be manufacturing, we've always taken the standpoint of what can we do to prepare our students for the workforce with that credential in mind. And there's an element today, and I know there's discussions definitely happening at the state level of, whether these credentials are worth it. We actually get funded based off of how many credentials we deliver. And so there folks at our state capitol are always looking at whether credentials are valid. And so when we review those credentials, we truly look at the lens of what is the competencies and what is the skill level that is matching those industry expectations. And what we have found, depending on the field, is the expectations that have sometimes been provided either by the state or even by industry doesn't necessarily match what we feel like is the best for the student, and vice versa. What may be best for the student truly may not be best for the employer. So it's truly finding that sweet spot. So as I wrote the article, and it's real brief. I just gave you kind of one example of what we've done. And that one example in the article is precision measuring. And really precision measuring, I selected that because that's one that really cuts across so many different industry areas. And as we looked at what's the best one for us, that's when we really grabbed hold of what was going on with the National Coalition of Certification Centers, NC3. And the reason why, and this is definitely not an NC3 sales pitch, but the reason why we grabbed a hold of that one and really ran with it is if you look at who developed that curriculum and the basis of where it comes from, is it was developed by Starrett. And if you don't know anything about precision measuring, Starrett sort of is the hallmark of precision measuring instruments. So when you get a dial caliper or a micrometer, most of the time, those really fine instruments that you're picking up and using were made by Starrett. And so for them to be the ones that have designed that curriculum and reinforced it, that meant something to us. So when we go to our industry partners and say, yeah, we're delivering this precision measuring curriculum that leads to this credential, we didn't develop it, and it wasn't developed by some other unknown entity. It was developed by Starrett. They know Starrett. So there are other examples that we've done. So, I'll throw it out there. So how many miles of wire are in a Boeing 747? Anyone have a guess? The answer is 150. There is 150 miles of wire in a 747. Now, most of us don't necessarily fly 747s. I mean, I could ask you about a 737, but there's so many different varieties of 737s. But you can imagine when we all fly, and we fly a lot, we want that to be safe. If you have an issue, you can't pull to the side and change the tire, right? So 150 miles of wire. They don't solder wire in airplanes. Though that wire is terminated. And so if you ask anyone in the aviation industry, what is the best tool, the best instrument for terminating wire? The answer every time is a company called Daniels. It's a small company located in Florida. And so the certification for electrical termination is through Daniels in NC3. And so, that was just another example of again, that we actually helped NC3 with that one because we invest so much in aviation here at WSU Tech. But it's just those type of examples, and it doesn't necessarily have to be NC3. There are other examples. I know Jason's on here. SACA is another example of another credential that based in industry that builds upon itself and scaffolds into it, and you can pick and select those credentials that align with your program too. So I think that's the other thing, going back to, we don't always do exactly what matches with industry because it isn't really necessarily the best fit. So our state dictates to us at certain levels what credential we must do. So, you know, for example, in that one, the level for state is American Welding Society. Everyone, you know, you should really do American Welding Society testing. Well, we've been doing that for years and years and years. And I can tell you without a doubt, for an entry-level welder, which is what we do, whether it's, you know, a lot of you on here are workforce trainers. I live in both worlds, so I do academics and workforce training. The average pass rate for a student going through what we do is somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 to 30%. So in reality, if I sent students through my program and I had a 25 to 30% success rate, my faculty wouldn't have a job very long. I wouldn't have a job very long. It's not good. But that's the success rate on the credential. That's what we use for the credential. However, we decided, you know, that's not the best watermark for our students. We want our students to have the confidence when they go out there. There is no scaffolding in AWS credentialing to ensure that there's skill building, because we want a credential to also have skill building that shows that a student has the ability to demonstrate that their skills have built upon them as they were in our program. And so there, you know, we use Lincoln Electric, which is, again, through NC3, but it just shows that there are other options that are out there. So the other example that I included in the article was our competency-based program. And I know Northland spoke a lot about competency-based. We did ours because it was truly responsive to industry. And in that case, we lived in the Title IV world of students needed to come in and they needed financial aid to go through this program. And having said that, it was a 16-week program, and then we were able to manipulate it where it could be an 8-week program, and we manipulated it a little bit more where it had to be a 7-week program. And every time the company's like, where are our workers at? We can get them, and it's 2 to 3 weeks. And so, you know, for the workforce folks, it's easy to do, but when the company says, I need 400 in the next quarter, I can't do that. You know, I can't do that without having, you know, these folks have other things to do. They need the financial support to be able to go through some kind of program like this. So when we took a look at the model that they were doing in industry, that's a competency-based model. They're testing their skills, they're running them through, they're at different paces, they're at different levels, and they're skill checking it at each level. So we took that model and we instituted it first, not in a competency-based structure, but just layered it into our 7 weeks, and then ran the gamut and applied through our regional accreditor, which, you know, is a 6-month process at a minimum, but got our program approved. And then this fall, we launched a competency-based program in our aviation sheet metal program. And what we have found is it is, you know, and I think Aaron alluded to this, it is the perfect model for students that need different capabilities when it comes to academic structure. And so many times we just layer the structure on top of them and say, you know, kind of, here it is, good luck, live within this structure. And CBE, which is what industry has figured out many, many years ago, is like, you don't need to live within this structure. CBE gives you the flexibility to not have structure, and students pace at different levels. And that's the beauty of what we've done, is now you have students that if they've had some kind of industry experience, they could come in and out in a much quicker time. But we've said, all right, well, in the old model, it was 7 weeks, 8 weeks. And after that time, if you didn't know it, you probably had a passing grade, but when you got to industry, you weren't going to be successful. You were going to get on a line and you were not going to be successful. And then we heard about, well, that's your fault as the training agent. That's our fault. Well, no, we gave them what we had to give them. It just wasn't, that's what we had to do. Now with competency-based, if they need longer time, they have that time. They have that time to hone those skills and work those skills. And that's really what we needed to do, and build that in and work that the students have those options, especially as we, you know, start looking at those other pillars within NCATC of things like working with underrepresented and working with, students in ESL programs and those other pieces where, you know, they may need some other pieces to get them where the advantage hasn't necessarily been for them. Applied learning is another one of those. I spoke to that in the article about being able to adjust schedules. So we've taken our welding program, which traditionally has always been a 5-day-a-week traditional academic program. You got to come to school 5 days a week or 4 days a week for that. Right now, my welding students they come 2 days a week. They come either on Monday, Tuesday, or Thursday, Friday. And now they have a 3-day block to go work. And we help those students go for applied learning, earn and learn opportunities to start building that into that so they can hopefully get a welding job or at least a manufacturing job while they're in school in their welding program to learn on the job, which we know builds so much skill faster and gives that experience faster while they're in school. And so I think the flexibility of, again, helping those students and helping industry at the same time, and credentialing allows us to do that in competency-based education. As we've known for a while, it just gives us that leg up. So back to you, Craig.
I'll tell you, you guys energize me every time I hear you, and so glad you are doing what you're doing and raising the bar and continuing to keep all those things you've talked about, improving and shorter time, more competency, depending on the student, whether they're incumbent workforce or pipeline students from high school. But now we want to turn it over. The last 10 minutes is all we've got left, but we want everybody to raise their hand on the little screen if you can, or turn on your camera and speak up. We'll just go around robin, but I want to note that Adam and Rhonda put in the chat that they're both using NC3, whether it's measurement or Festo's Industry 4.0 mechatronics certifications. So it's something we actually helped stand up NC3 about 20 years ago with a little meeting with Snap-on and Gateway Technical College in Wisconsin. And they said, hey, can we borrow your bylaws and get us a jump start? So NCATC gave them the bylaws. That's about all we have in the skin in the game, except we've supported them ever since. And they are one of our long-term, very successful strategic partners. And we value them highly in all that they're doing for you all. So I'll turn it over to the group. Please interact with our presenters, and it's all your floor for the next 10 minutes before we have to close out.
We answered everything. That's awesome.
There's Rhonda.
Yes, I have a question. Scott, I love this idea of the way you have redone your welding scheduling to allow for that work-based learning time. How did that go over with your faculty and your students? I know employers absolutely loved it, but how did it go over inside?
So students didn't really see a difference because of the way we have everything structured. So a few years ago, again, we had the problem in welding structurally where employers would come to us and say, we need welders all the time, right? I need 20, I need 15, I need 10 now. And I would be like, well, I will have 15 in May and I will have 20 in December at the end of semesters. That just wasn't working. So we created fast track welding 1 semester, and I gave them MIG. So 80% of the welding done in manufacturing is MIG welding. So we focused on MIG welding. We gave them blueprint, we gave them safety, we gave them print reading, and we focused on MIG welding. So GMAW welding. And so we took that GMAW welding model, and that's what we've really focused on with those 2 days. So my weld shops, both of my weld shops run from 6:30 in the morning till 10 o'clock at night, 4 days a week, and they are full. Right now I have 225 welders enrolled all day long. So, and frankly, they could all graduate tomorrow, and I need another 225 in the pipeline, right? So, so we do a morning group, we do an afternoon group, and we do an evening group at both locations. And I have 51 booths. We're doing some unique models too. I have 2 virtual labs. I have an 18 booth virtual lab and a 14 booth virtual lab. Now I'm here to tell you, you can't be a welder virtually. You have to get in the booth. Now, we use virtual to supplement and help learn to expedite welding. You cannot be a welder without getting in the booth, but you can expedite learning and the process using a virtual machine. So that's been our process, and it has worked immensely. We did a study with Kansas State University where we did a true experiment. One group used virtual welding, one group did not. The group that used virtual welding scored higher in bend tests than the group that did not. We won Skills USA high school and post-secondary at the state last year, first time ever. Both those students went through fast track. Both those students went through using virtual. The proof's in the pudding. They're both employed right now. They're both making more than all of my welding instructors. So it's leaps. I'm here to tell you that right now. Has nothing to do with virtual welding, has nothing to do with scheduling. We are true believers. We have drank the Kool-Aid in the LEAPS curriculum.
I'm very familiar because we are NC3, but I haven't moved that needle off of AWS, strictly AWS.
No books. We don't do books. We use LEAPS. We have drank the Kool-Aid.
And it's working very well, sounds like. All right. Who else would like to ask any of our panelists or just interact a little more? We have 5 minutes before we have to close it down today, but we also want to encourage you to, look at the folks on the screen, and if you want to connect with them, put your emails in the chat. I'm going to do that right now for mine, as I promised up front. But it's meant to not just be today, but to carry this on. Now, I know we're going to have a disruption of the holiday break, which is great for all of us because we need it. But it's really to keep this membership organization of NCATC more in tune to each other, to pick your brain, to shortcut improvements in your programs, and to talk about things that are in our newsletter that are real time, working for scalability. So back to you all. Finish. Any questions or comments, please?
If there are no more questions, quick sales pitch, just throw it out there. September 20th through the 22nd, 2023, Wichita, Kansas, WSU Tech, fall NCATC conference, 35th anniversary. Wonderful Wichita. Weather will be nice in September, Jason, right? Not too bad in Kansas in September. So it'll be nice. I'm going to have some really cool tours, really great sessions. Wichita's easy to get to, easy to travel in. We don't have traffic.
Thank you for that. I'm glad you mentioned it. It is a little save the date in that newsletter that I put up for everybody, that if you haven't seen it. But as we turn the corner on the brand new year, around the second week at the latest of January, we'll have the registration site and all that ready to rock and roll for everyone. So look for it in your inbox, and that will be an amazing conference at WSU Tech, and highlighting a lot of what Scott's talked about and much, much more. So, Jonathan, Amanda, any thoughts before we close out in the next minute or two before the group leaves?
Well, just for me, and just kind of where we're at in this is, this concept of credit for prior learning, competency-based, name your thing. I think it really is an opportunity for us to validate skills and provide individuals who may not think there's opportunity, and to, kind of get their foot in the door and give, looking at it from diversity and inclusion opportunity, those that are looking at changing careers, as well as the emerging population. So that's a platform that we're hoping, as we continue to build it out, build it out, becomes opportunity for pipelines. And that's really kind of where we're at.
That's great. Jonathan, Aaron, any last thoughts?
I'd like to thank Aaron for that, the presentation overview for Northland's programs. It's great to see kind of at that starting front of getting those programs launched. And I know that's worthy of discussion, continuous discussion of those things that he was bringing up, the social dynamics, thinking about the student perspective, faculty perspective. I know there's been a lot of different challenges in getting that off the ground, but a tremendous recognition for the value that that is creating to meet our industry partner needs. So great job all around with launching that and the information put out today.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you all today.
I agree. And the good news is we have recorded this session like we do all of our webinars, and over the next 48 hours, it'll be up on our website for you all to either refer back to or we'll promote to other folks that couldn't make it today. But just remember that all of the webinars we always do are recorded and available on our website under the tab webinars. We're quite creative with our tabs, but without further ado, I want to thank Scott and Amanda and Jonathan and Aaron for their vast knowledge and passion for sharing with you all today. And thank you all as members or even potential members for being with us today. We're really excited to turn out and hope you all have a wonderful rest of the week and a great holiday season coming up. And we hope to see you in the new year. With that, thank you for all your time and attention today. And thank you, presenters, very much.